Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bread of Life channel. I'm excited to have Bob on today. He's someone who's been on the channel before, just jumping on streams. But today he's going to tell us his whole story about how, he was a Christian and how he lost his faith. And so I think we'll have a great discussion on God and faith and what happened with him. He's actually not here yet, which is okay because I want to announce the Atheist of the Month. Let me say hello to Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Good to see you. God bless you too. Hi, Uber. And hello to Ron. So, I didn't have many streams this month, so it was actually pretty easy to choose the Atheist of the Month. There was somebody who was at all the streams and who, did a lot of participation. And so the Atheist of Month award for the month of, I'm sorry. Okay, Bob says he's here, but Bob, you have to click on the link I sent you, the StreamYard link. I put it on. Okay, here he is. Hi, Bob. Welcome.
Yeah, hi. I didn't see the button. Yeah, I was like, I'm here. I'm waiting. Okay.
Good. Okay, cool. Well, I was just getting ready to announce the Atheist of the Month. And so the award goes to Travis. You are the Atheist of the Month for the month of April. And I'll read what I wrote. Thanks for your consistent participation in live streams and saucy comments. It's great to have you around on the Bread of Life channel. So Travis, please send me an email and I will send you your award. And hello to David and to Anam. Good to see you guys. Thanks for being here. And so, Bob, I'm so excited to be able to hear your whole story today.
I'm excited. Start? Yeah. Is my sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm excited to tell it, I guess. Where do you want? Do you just want me to launch in?
Start at the very beginning. Tell me about your upbringing. How did you become a Christian in the first place?
I made notes.
Okay, cool.
I was raised in a Baptist church. Mm-hmm. I was the second born, but the family ended up being quite large with 8 kids, but I was the second. I was 5 years old when I accepted Jesus. Our family was kind of dysfunctional. There wasn't excessive violence, but it was kind of chaotic. And both my folks worked because we didn't have that much money. My mom's mom was the one, I think she was the conduit to Christianity, because her husband never was into it. My dad, I guess the story that I heard later was when I was younger, my dad was really into it, but then he was disillusioned somehow, and then he just kind of dropped it. And when questioned about it, he goes, look, you just either accept him or you don't. He wouldn't go into detail. He was he wasn't too communicative sometimes. So
Did he go to church with you? Like, did he?
No, just for maybe for special program or the Christmas program, where the kids were singing or something like that, maybe. But other than that, he was very resistant to it. I got some notes here. So up until high school, I really wasn't super into it. I would sit through Sunday school class. I wasn't disruptive. I would participate in discussions, but it didn't really, it didn't do much for me, even though I considered myself to be saved because I was 5 years old and I had been taught, oh, you have to be saved. Jesus died for your sins and all that. So one time I went to my mom and prayed. She prayed with me and then I was saved. So, couple things. Some of this is what I experienced. A lot of this is what I experienced at the time, and then much later, years later, I got insight into what was actually going on.
Okay.
So they had a Awana club, and so they made us go to a Awana club. If people know what that is, it's a
yeah.
So I was never athletic. Didn't run very fast. I didn't want to run. The older kids were the team captains, and the one I would always get was kind of a bully, and he was very competitive, and he wanted to run. And he would actually, they would line you up tallest to shortest to run a game, a relay race or whatever. And sometimes we were on the side, but there was a door to the furnace room, and he would actually have me go in the furnace room and hide so that I wasn't the shortest. So he had a better chance of winning because I would have slowed everything down. That was kind of funny. In around about junior high, my mom had all 8 kids by then, and she worked, and she was pretty tired. And to go to church and then come home and fix dinner or do dinner in some way that it was done. So I was starting to figure out how to cook. And so we had this deal where I would stay home and cook Sunday dinner. I didn't have to go to church. And, when they got home, it was all ready. And I loved it because on Sunday morning on Channel 9 out of Chicago, there was Sherlock Holmes movies or Charlie Chan or these old movies. And I would just have dinner cooking. I could watch from the kitchen or actually take breaks and sit down. And I was in my pajamas. It was great. Well, there was this lady named Jean, and she was very nice. And I still admire her to this day. She was what I picture as a really good Christian, very kind, very understanding, very patient. And she noticed that I had been scarce. And so she sat me down and talked to me. And like a dummy, I said, oh, yeah, well, we have this deal. Well, that put the stop to that. So as kind as she was, she apparently went to my mom, laid this guilt trip on her about neglecting my spiritual life. And, now again, now that's what happened then. Now I'm thinking back, my mom probably could have used the break. I kind of resent that interference. In retrospect, it might have been fine if I had just continued doing that as long as I was interested. Our church leadership, I found out later, the deacons were these, they were all real estate guys. They were realtors. And it turns out later they were really into corrupt stuff. They had dirty deals and stuff like that. And one time they came down and they talked to the middle school or the junior high. It was junior high back then. And we got to talk about astrology and how terrible astrology was. And we shouldn't have anything to do with astrology. Now, astrology, as I see it now, is just harmless garbage. It doesn't mean anything. It's all a joke. There's no evil influence to it. And do you know how much astrology is in the Bible? Do you know how many stories are based on the constellations and things like that? So that's something that just recently I heard about astrotheology, and I thought back to being talked to about how astrology was really bad. So I think that's everything. Oh, well, we used to have one good thing was our church conference had a summer camp up in the northern suburbs, out in the woods. It's called Camp Hickory, and we would go to that every year. I went to, they had boys and girls camp, and then, or age, this week would be boys from this age to this age. I only did that once, and that didn't work for me because there was a lot of bullying, and I just didn't enjoy that. But for a number of years, we went to family camp, and you all went as a family, and you stayed. And I think my dad even came along, and I really liked that. I had fun with that. And later on, when I was a little older, I went back and I did some counseling, volunteer counseling at the camp, stuff like that. But that was a good memory. Then next would be like high school. And in 1972, I would have been a junior. I went to a thing called Explo 72, which was a Campus Crusade for Christ program held in Dallas, Texas. It was a huge, the large meetings were held in, stadium, football stadium, for the big rallies at the end. And then during the day, you had smaller sessions and things like that, and they fed us and all that. So that was, boy, talk about getting worked up and excited. So that was really a high point. So I kind of came back on fire from that. And that was probably the most involved and excited time in my life. Was after that. We would go to our conference. We'd have different events from our conference. And I know we heard Josh McDowell speak once at McCormick Place in Chicago. Back in the 70s, there was a series of speakers, and these were huge revivals, things like that. So we had, I know we heard, I can't remember everyone. I know we heard Hal Lindsey. You know who Hal Lindsey is? You heard him speak.
Didn't he write some kind of like apocalypse book or something like this? I don't know.
The Late Great Planet Earth.
Yes, okay.
And I read it, and oh baby, I didn't think we were going to be around for 10 more years after I read that book. And I was obnoxious about it. And I know we heard I know we heard Maria von Trapp was another one. You know who she is, right?
Yeah, the Sound of Music lady.
Yeah, she was. She had made a profession of faith, and so now they had her touring, and she was quite. She was older at the time, but she was would tell the story, her stories from the 40s and give her testimony and things like that. And then also we had in our school, we would have things where they would come after hours and have different groups would host different speakers. And one time we had Mike Warnke back in his heyday before
I don't know
he turned out.
is.
Oh, Mike Warnke was his book was called The Satan Seller, and he was supposedly a satanic high priest, and he billed himself as a comedian, and he was kind of funny, but he told this horrible story about being a Satanist and getting saved, and it turned out to all be a fraud. He never, it was all made up. I don't know. Yeah, it was a big. You look it up, look him up sometime. It's kind of. I really liked him. It disappointed, and he was really fun to listen to. But apparently, all that Satan stuff, and he, I think that was one of the things that set off the Satanic Panic, which came along later on in the 80s. In the summer of '73, so I had just graduated, and our church conference had a program where you went around and you spent like 2 weeks in a Chicago church, and they helped with the VBS and helped out at the church and evangelize and stuff like that. And you were supposed to sign up for 1 2-week thing. Well, they were kind of short, so I spent the whole summer. I moved from church to church all summer, and met some really neat people. We were at Erwin Lutzer's church. You ever heard of Erwin Lutzer?
Mm-mm.
He had written several books. He was a very intelligent, educated man. I was quite impressed with him, and I got to talk to him. So I was really on a high starting in 72. There were a lot of interesting, exciting things going on. And then after I graduated in 74, I did a summer program in Europe. I spent most of the summer in France, and it was called Eurocorps. So it was Eurocorps 74, and it was with Greater Europe Mission. And so that was a thrill. That was really neat. Just, what can I tell you? Oh, and I had been taking French, and I could speak fairly well. And it's hard to understand when people who talk at their normal speed, it's kind of, you pick out a word here and there, and you have to kind of think of what they said. There was one incident where this guy came. We were mixing concrete and pouring it. So this guy came with a truck full of sand, gravel, and cement. Mm-hmm. And he was very garbled, and I was the only one there, and he came there, and he was trying to ask me where to put it. I got sable something, Simon. So I said, yeah, that's what you got. I go, but I don't understand. He goes, "Oula me! Where do I put it?" I go, "Oh, okay." It was kind of funny. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
He sounded a little bit like he might have been a little drunk or something. He was kind of slurring his words. So, yeah, but that was a fun summer. And then I came back from that, and now I was college age. I wasn't attending anywhere at the time. The college Sunday school class was really good. That was a fun group, and they met in the back room of a restaurant, and then you got a bus for the main service. They didn't have a room big enough for the college class because we were a college town, so there was a large college, a large pool of college age kids during the year. So that was good. And the teacher, the teacher taught at the university. His name was Wes Schmidt. He was a really nice guy, really great guy. Somewhere a year or two later, I attended the Bill Gothard seminar. Remember hearing about that?
Never heard of that. Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh! He started teaching this class at Wheaton College. He originally called it the Institute in Basic Youth Conflicts, and it was about problems that parents and teens had. And he thought he had the biblical principles to figure out how they can communicate and how people should live their lives and certain principles. Later, so I was in the early days because it was still the Institute in Basic Youth Conflicts. Later, he changed it to the Institute in Basic Life Principles. And then it just thousands and thousands of people attended that, and you could it was like $35 for the whole thing for the week, but then you could go back for free after that, so that you could get it over, and you get a big red binder with all the information and stuff like that. A little side note: Bill Gothard, his first sex scandal involved his brother. In 1980, his brother was being inappropriate with the secretaries, and so instead of getting rid of him, firing him from the ministry, he sent him off to a remote location one of their facilities that was kind of way out in the country. And then he didn't have, kind of let him keep doing what he was doing. And then about that time, Bill was accused of being inappropriate with some of the women and younger girls. And this was like in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
And so he basically quashed the investigation. He just changed things so that they couldn't look into it. And so it kind of died down. And a couple years later, his company started to produce homeschooling materials. And a lot of these are still used today. I'm trying to think of the name of what those materials are called. Maybe somebody knows. So things went on like that until not too long ago, when they finally, because he had gone back to where he was being inappropriate with some of the younger girls that they had working there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how serious it was, but it was creepy and inappropriate. And they finally kicked him out. Look it up sometime. Look up Bill Gothard. There's some really good stuff that exposes this. Now, one thing I remember, he would have been about 40 when in the 70s when I attended the seminar. And I remember one thing he said, well, people ask me, why aren't you married? He goes, look, all I need is the right woman and a free weekend, be a done deal. He never married. So, and look at the mess. So,
and, now, how did that affect you at the time when you were hearing about these things?
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. I only found out recently. I hadn't thought about it in a long time. Mm-hmm. I can't remember where I first heard there was something going on, and I recently I checked out some videos to get make sure I had the information right. But then I remembered he said, "Oh, I could get married; it wouldn't be a problem," and he never did. So, he is very influential among the Quiverful movement. The Quiverful movement is kind of based on his thing, and the Pearls with their discipline, raise up a child, all that weird stuff that the Duggars, they were influenced by Bill Gothard. It's just all creepy and wrong as far as I'm concerned, and it doesn't bode well for Christianity. Then what happened? There was I was hanging out with the college kids, and some of them did this thing where they worked for this company where you went down and sold books. They sent you like down south. They had like I think it was like a Bible dictionary and some other educational material and stuff like that. And you went door to door and you took orders for the books. And it was almost cult-like. You had to really get your head, into it and just give yourself over to it. And there was one guy they suggested. They said you should like when you go for breakfast, because you go as a group to have breakfast. So you should have, your Bible with you. So like when you're going to spare a moment, you should be reading your Bible. So this one guy was just really into it. And we were waiting in line, and he said to me, he said, "Hey, how come you don't have a Bible?" I said, How do you know that I don't have one in my pocket? He goes, "Oh, okay." So later we sat down and he pulled out his Bible and he started reading it, and I didn't. He said, I thought you said you had one in my pocket. I said, no. I asked how you know I didn't.
Now, but now, Bob,
Because why are you bothering me? Who are you to come and, and judge me and have an opinion about, it's like, come on, man, you're a little too intense there.
Well, now, were you into your Bible? Like, did you, what was your spiritual experience while all this was going on?
I was still in it, but the selling books door to door was just not my thing. It was very emotionally draining, and I didn't have the right temperament. And their thing was, no, there's no such thing as having the right temperament. You're not cut out to, so I'm not cut out for this. You're not cut out for this. You just do it. And it was a very cult-like. It's like, you do this. And if anybody started to fade and they were going to quit, they were not into it, they were you should shun them. They were anathema.
Now, was this a job, right? Was this a job, or was this your
it had a very
spiritual life?
Vibe.
I'm kind of confused.
It had a very culty feel to it. It was you had to do certain thing, and it was, and so I failed and went home, and I thought, what was I thinking? So at that point, I stopped going to church for a while, because I didn't want to run into the guys that I had associated with, the guys that had done this before, and they were going to do it again, and I thought, I could do that, and I couldn't do it, and I didn't want to deal with what they would have to say. It was, so I had a gap where this is the first time I just really crashed emotionally and associated church with failure and disappointment and unfulfilled expectation. And so I went a number of years. I stopped attending church. We had just changed pastors. We got a new pastor. And by the time I came back, this guy was almost done. So I missed his whole tenure. So I knew him. I saw him occasionally, but I didn't hear very many of his sermons. The guy before I really liked, my junior high school days. I really enjoyed his sermons. I liked his teaching. He had a guy that I hung out with. His son we were about the same age, so there was I had this little peer group of Christian high school kids from church, so that wasn't too bad. But so then after that I kicked around. I took some community college classes. My wife and I got married at some point.
Was your wife a Christian?
She had a really traumatic Catholic upbringing. I don't want to go, if she ever found out I said anything about her, I would be in so much trouble.
Okay.
So I can't go into detail, but
no problem.
we so she got really saved later. She went through some trauma and now considers herself a Christian.
Does it bother her that you're not a Christian now?
not as much as it did right away. She was really traumatized. She says, when I finally, because we would decide whether to go to church on a particular Sunday, and sometimes she wasn't physically up to it. She was going through different health problems, and sometimes I would get a ride, or she would drop me off or something like that. And after a while, this was in the fall of 2019, I just kind of stopped going. As far as her concerned, I had come out to them and said, I'd emailed. I was going to talk to the pastor, and he never showed up, so I just started emailing. So they all knew where I stood. And then she noticed that I had stopped going to church. And she goes, "Aren't you going to go to church anymore?" I go, "Yeah, I don't believe that anymore." And she says, you're not a tough person. You would never thrive in the military. I said, "Oh no, that would be miserable." She goes, "How are you going to handle hell?" I said, "By not going because it doesn't exist." Is this a trick question? So she was up, but she's cooler lately. Lately she's kind of mellowed out and adapted, and we can actually talk a little bit. But at first, it's been 2.5 years. Next month it'll be 2.5 years. So at first it was kind of a shock to the system, and she would get upset sometimes. So.
Wow. Well, now how did that happen? Because so you're going along, you stopped going to church for a while, then you went back to church. Like,
yeah,
where are we in the story, and when do your doubts start coming in?
Well, I always had doubts.
Mm-hmm.
When I the first thing, as soon as I studied a little biology, I gave up young Earth creationism. I didn't believe that anymore. I didn't believe in Noah's Ark. That wasn't right. Now knowing what I know, it's like, well, of course. But I'm trying to think of an example of just more and more things just didn't make sense. What Christianity was built up to be just didn't pan out. If I had been raised in a secular home and had access to therapy, I'm not completely mentally great. I suffer from, I kind of cycle a little bit, a little bipolar. I have highs and lows. I've been on kind of a low lately, and when we set this up, part of me was like, "Oh, I'm not up to this. I can't do this. I'm in a low phase," and it's So I just think I would have been better off. You don't know, but I think I would have been better off being raised secular with, and had therapy. I think I would have done a lot better. But the story. So when I started working at the university, or even before I got that job, I was back at church, and I was trying to attend my old church that I grew up in. But I didn't drive, and it was way out. It was miles away. And so I was always trying to get a ride. People said, "Oh yeah, we'll take you. But that would fall through. And I said, "Well, this is just ridiculous. There's this Baptist campus ministry that's within walking distance. I know pastor and his wife, the co-pastors. I could walk over there. And so I went there for like 24 years, at least. I just most Sundays, sometimes I was working on Sundays, and they were great people, and I really enjoyed it. It was a little weird because it was mainly for the students, but I was part of the university community. I was an employee, and so I just tried to not be obnoxious or overpower, just trying to be in the background and help out with things. They had a big fundraiser, the bake sale thing, and so I showed up and I knew all about baking and stuff, and I showed them a bunch of stuff, and they were real appreciative of that. So it was happy. We would go to there was a homeless shelter in the town, and like once a month for a while we would go and cook them breakfast. So usually people did pancakes. So sometimes we would do pancakes. I said, I want to do biscuits and gravy. So I had this system where I did biscuits from scratch and did a big pot of gravy. I had cooked the sausage ahead of time because, this is what I knew how to do. And they were so appreciative. It was, everybody just was blown away. I mean, it was, because usually their breakfast was cereal, during the week is cereal, and then maybe occasionally pancakes when some church or some group was going to come and do breakfast. And I had one that was especially, and we got up like at 5:30 to get over and do that, and then we came to service after that. And I had a particularly good experience, and we came back, and one of the songs we sang was "Live Like That," and I'm trying to think of the name, Sidewalk Prophets or something like that. Do you know the song?
No.
Yeah, if anybody, it's about when people look back on my life, I want them to say I should live like that. And it choked me up. It just brought me to tears. It was a great experience. I still remember that, and I'm Live Like That. I think is going to be on I got to do my funeral music list. So that's maybe one of the songs that are on there. It really, yeah. So that was a good experience, and we dealt with a couple pastors there, and then we moved away, and I found this other little church, and they were all very right wing, and I thought it was a weird, twisted version of Christianity. And when I would talk to them and say, why do you support this person? I got right wing talking points. It didn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And then I really, all the doubts that I had really came to a head. I said, something ain't right. This just stinks. And I got watched some YouTube and got some information that kind of gave me a bigger picture of what the Bible actually is, what it's involved, how it's similar, the kind of thing I talked about before, how it's similar, it's derived from other, the literature of surrounding. It's not that remarkable. Apparently the Hebrew religion originally started out as polytheism, and then they would narrow it down and eventually ended up with monotheism. Christianity is based partially on the worship of Yahweh, but then there are influences from Greek philosophers and Zoroastrianism and all these different influences. It's a syncretism. It's a combining of ideas. And over 300 years, it kind of coalesced into what what we see as Christianity today. But it had various different beliefs, and they hashed things out, and the Rome Church said, no, you guys are wrong, you guys are heretics, and then that version of Christianity won out. But that wasn't there. There's no evidence that was what everyone believed at the beginning. They believed all kinds of different things. They debated whether Jesus was God. Was he adopted by God at his baptism or after the resurrection? Oh no, wait, he was born the God man. It all developed and grew, and now we have the final, what has been called orthodoxy, because these are the guys that won the discussion. They won the argument. And largely the only way we know about all these other forms of belief is when the guys that were against it were writing against it. Were writing, they said, well, they believe this. And the actual documents are mostly been destroyed, Gnostic texts and things like that. But all we have is, well, this is what they say, and this is why it's wrong. So that's how we know what they say. Now, we have a few Gnostic texts. Nag Hamadi, you know about the Nag Hamadi Library?
No.
Nag Hamadi is 1948. They found a cache of documents that apparently this group, this group of Christians got the word. They said, well, here's the list of texts that we don't want you using anymore. Get rid of them. Well, they didn't want to get rid of them, so they hid them in a cave, and they were going to come back, and they never came back, and so they turned up. So we have some of these other gospels and different Gnostic writings and things that we only knew about because of the polemic against them, by Orthodox writers. So it's really fascinating, and it's much more complex than the Christianity as it exists today, as mainstream Protestant, evangelical, whatever Christianity. Even though it takes different forms, and different beliefs are stressed or de-stressed, and you don't believe in eternal conscious torment, which is fine.
No, I don't believe in eternal conscious torment.
Yeah, that's what I said. You don't.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
I thought you said you believe
in
it.
I know. I'm saying there's a lot of in what we would consider orthodoxy. Current modern day Christianity takes different forms.
Yeah.
But there were the range of belief and the range of interpretation was even wider from the beginning. It narrowed down and narrowed down and narrowed down. So, yeah, there's no. I just look back, and there was nothing that happened that required a God. Okay, good things happened, bad things happened.
Well, Bob, there's something interesting about your story. And so, I'm hearing you describing a lot of religious activity, but what I'm not hearing at all is your encounters with God, your conversations with God, or something between you and God. And so I don't know if that's because you weren't really connecting with God, or now that you don't believe, you don't want to look back at that as if you were actually connecting with God. But the reason I'm curious about this is because sometimes I do go into churches and I think, dang, does anybody here like really believe this stuff? Like it just feels like it feels like there's a spiritual hardness of heart, even though like they're, on the outside seeming like they're Bible believers, but then like it doesn't, like there's something missing. And when I'm hearing you talk, it sounds like what's missing is you and God. But I don't know. Is that just because you're looking back?
At various times in my life, it was a problem to maintain a consistent devotional life.
Mm-hmm.
But and I would feel really bad about that. But looking back, I really blame myself. Oh, you're sinful. You can't. But looking back, it's like that with everything. I never had much. I took classes. I never got my degree because it was hard. It was hard to concentrate on things. When I was younger, I did really well in school because I could get the information and I could get, test would come, I give it back to you. Why wouldn't I know it? You told me, I remember it, here it is. So I tested really well. I zipped along, I was a little bored sometimes because it didn't take much to learn and regurgitate. But what I could never do was independent study. To sit down and focus on something for myself and absorb it. And my brain, I just couldn't sit still with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be given, go off and do this on your own. I can't stay focused. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking maybe I had some kind of, learning disability or ADHD, although I did well in school because I had good mm-hmm. verbal skills. I could do math. I could do all this stuff, but just to teach myself things was hard. And now I see when I tried to sit down and focus on, a devotional, try to read and meditate. Meditating is just awful. It's just I can't focus. And I would feel bad. About that. But I went to a men's, I'll tell you a story about, when was it? Probably back in the 90s when I was still attending church, and there was a men's Bible study. And we would have an assignment and we would go away and say, do this, read this, answer these, whatever. It was, you had like homework. And I would go, yeah, I got to do that. Yeah, no, I can't. And I never did the homework. But I didn't do homework. I didn't do regular homework. So I was getting in trouble. I didn't do the homework. Take the test. I get ace the test, but here's all this busy work you want me to do. So I went back and I was just really getting frustrated because I just never would do the homework. And so I wrote this statement. And when it came to me, I read this thing off and said, I don't know what it is. I want to do this. I try to do this, but my brain just won't settle down and do it. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to set myself up for expectation. These expectations, it's a thing with my brain.
Yeah.
So at this point I'm kind of getting back into the frustrated thing, but on the other hand, I've come to peace with it. Plus I don't have to do anything, I don't have to study anything anymore. I don't want to.
Yeah.
It went just this, my little notes that I made for today. I had planned to start working on it earlier. I did it this morning.
Well,
The pressure, it got to the point. That's what it took. It took pressure. It had to have a deadline and something like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't sleep that well. And I thought, this is going to be a disaster. But yeah, I finally sat down. I had like a first draft, and then I had a second draft, and I finally got it. And when I got to the point where that was all as far as I wanted to go, then I stopped. So I don't know what it is, but just, I don't know. I work better in group.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I don't know what to say.
Well, I didn't, like, by making that comment, I didn't mean to like berate you for not having enough of a devotional life as a Christian. It was more kind of like, did you ever have that connection with God? Was there ever a moment when you were like, wow, God really loves me? Like, this is amazing. Like, did you ever have these experiences where it, not about were you good at reading the Bible or were you good at praying, but did you ever have the experience of knowing God's love and, that this kind of thing?
Probably in response to some really, really good speaker, somebody that really could deliver a message and really inspire me. Well, that time when I told you about we did the breakfast and we came back and we sang the song and I was almost in tears, and I got up and gave a testimony of just how full my heart. I can still, it's they talk about it, it comes right back to me. How full my heart was about, and I was showing the love of God. I felt the love of God by showing, it was all one thing. But
and so you're saying you still feel that right now. What do you do with that experience now? Like, do you say, no, it really wasn't the love of God I was feeling? Or how do you interpret that now?
It's people should love people. And I did, and I do. And love is a real thing. It's a chemical brain state. And I don't want to say it's just that, but it's really real. It's really happening. And before we understood it, we said, oh my gosh, this feeling is so amazing. There must be something. I don't think that that's necessary anymore. We can feel these things. It's fine. It's God, it just isn't necessary. And I don't see any definitive, this is the only way to explain it. And what I get is this book. It's like, well, this book is, it was, you can see how they took this story from this, and then they took this idea from here and like that. And then because the Bible was unchallenged for hundreds of years, it's the book. This is your God is a book.
Not my God.
You have feelings. Well, not yours, not yours, whatever. But largely, all you've got that you can point to, you say, here I have this book, and it says some things that I really like. Yeah, but what about this? Oh, don't pay attention. God sometimes is like he's like some parents that have this child, and he's like really, really special. They say, oh, our kid is so special. And he draws all these pictures like that. And a lot of them is not that good. A lot of them are awful, but there's some really good ones. So the really good ones get up on the fridge and you say, look, our child is special. Look at all these great pictures he drew. Yeah, but there's 10 times as much stuff that's garbage. It's you're cherry picking. So it's and when you question, you get the how dare you question? I am the almighty powerful Oz. Don't look behind the curtain. Come on.
Mm.
Yes, I feel things and I felt things, but it's just a kind of a mixed bag of all kinds of things. I don't see a pattern that when I saw what was behind it all, there was nothing that I say, oh no, it must be true because I felt this at this time.
Mm.
It and another way that I was going to go with this is there were two. Oh, sorry, I got a little cramp. Okay,
No problem.
there were two patterns that I happen to know since my deconversion and watching all these videos and listening to different things. I see two patterns. One is these what I would call super Christians, people that really showed learning and progress, and they had influence, and it all fell apart. Bill Gothard is one. Jerry Falwell Jr. I was going to list them off, and I'm not saying this doesn't prove anything, but
Right.
Why is it? How can this happen? If they're, this is everything that I could never do. Bill Gothard's stories, he really had trouble in school, and what he finally started to do, he started to memorize scripture. And so then that was his inroad into accomplishing something, his learning.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I memorized a little bit, but it was just irritating. So, and then the other phenomenon, so that's these super Christians that just fall and make a mess of it and make you wonder, well, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't God stop that? Why didn't he follow through on that? Because that's really bad. I mean, that's a mark, that's something that I'm tired. I didn't get as much sleep as I wanted to last night. The other thing
sorry.
no, that's okay. It was not your fault. It was just I had a rough night. The other thing was really super involved Christians that were doing everything right. They were pastors and they were, shining lights in Christianity. And then after a certain point, they said, hey, wait a minute. There's nothing to this. I guess I'm an agnostic. I'm an atheist. And I could list them off. You have Dr. Josh Bowen and Matt Dillahunty and Seth Andrews and, just on and on and on. People that really took Christianity seriously. And you could say more than I ever did. And maybe I never took it as seriously as I should. Life, I got distracted. I got married and I had to work. I had a job. I never finished school. So it was easier for me to work. It was structure. I could do there. I had to do this job and then I could go home, but just to do all this independent study and to writing papers. Oh my God, writing papers. I just couldn't. It was really hard. And when I did write something, it really took it out of me emotionally. There was no satisfaction. There was no like, oh, good, I got this. It's like, this is garbage. I don't know, So these are people that could really do the work and focus and study. And when they pursued it they took an honest look at it, they realized that there was nothing to it. and I was going to list off all these people, but that was another thing, and that doesn't help.
Well, what about all the people? And, I have to say, Dr. Josh's story is absolutely heartbreaking to me. Like, I listened to a lot of deconversion stories. His is the one that bothers me. And that's because he had such a close relationship with the Lord. So that bothers me.
So, and what about, no one will be able to snatch them out of my hand. I can't think of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is hard because he wasn't ready. He wasn't prepared for it. It was a shock. I think he's doing fine now. I catch him, anything he's on, I love him so much, and I watch him, and he seems fine. He seems well adjusted. He and his wife, she still is a kind of a believer, and they get along fine, and But it was, it was a terrible shock to him at the time. He wasn't ready. He talked about his friend Caleb, who was slowly, exposed to the idea, well, this isn't quite exactly the way it is, and little by little, and so he acclimated to it, and he still believed, but the nature of his belief changed. But Josh realized, oh my God, it's all been a lie, and it was.
Well, Bob, for all the Dr. Joshes out there, there's also many who have studied like Dr. Josh and who still believe.
So, that's the other thing. There are people that they thread that needle. I don't know. That's what it is. It's like threading a needle. It's like, boy, you just gotta get right. And it can be done, I guess, but it doesn't prove anything.
Well, when you talk about love between humans and humans should love each other.
Yes.
Why should humans love each other? Why is that important?
Well, what's the alternative? I've just.
Well, if it's all just chemicals and brain states, who cares? Like, what's the difference between murder and love?
Oh, come on. That's just.
I'm serious. Silly. How?
That's here's the where do we get your morality from?
Well, no, but really, I don't understand what people mean when they say humans should love each other.
Right. I'll give you the Matt Dillahunty. If we decide, okay, so why do we play chess? Well, you can play chess or not play chess. Okay. But if you play chess, do you want to win? Yeah, we want to win. Okay, here's your goal. We're going to play chess. It's going to win. Here are the rules. Within those rules, if you take this action, it's more likely to result in you winning. And if you take this action, it's going to. So what is our goal? What are we going to decide we want? We want human flourishing. We want well-being. We want to reduce human suffering. Have as many people have a livable life. To eliminate as much poverty and starvation and disease as we can. Okay, so if that's our goal, do we have to know why that's our goal? Isn't that what we should want? Isn't that what God wants? Then the actions that we take that work toward that goal are good, are moral, and the actions that people take that go away from that goal, they grab all the money, they exploit other people and take advantage of them. That we call that immoral because it's going in the wrong direction.
Well, for me personally, if I did not believe in God, I would steal. I would do everything I could to just make my life better. Yes, I would, because there would be no difference.
Silly. What are you, a psychopath?
Well, I don't know.
And you know, and psychopathy, if you look at it, that is proof that the biology is important, because these people don't have the right brain orientation. It's a thing where, you know, how do you explain that? It's like if someone is, you know, missing a limb or something, it's, oh well, that's not the normal configuration. So it's not that hard for me to understand that. And then you come back and you say, oh well, yeah, well, if there's no God, well then you got to go back and explain, well, what was the point of, you know, why slavery, why this, why that? You got to go back in and explain away all this stuff that we would nowadays say, oh, that's really evil. We're not going to run things like that. But apparently at that time it was okay. You know, does God change or not? He's not supposed to change. But and again, that stuff, when you compare it to the surrounding cultures, it's not remarkable. It's the same kind of thing that other cultures. Some, and in comparison, some of it was worse and some of it was better. But it was in the context of the ancient Near East. It was pretty typical stuff. So I don't see why it's necessary for morality.
You don't see why what is necessary for morality?
Well, when you say you need, you know, the typical argument, well, if you don't believe in God, where do you get your morals from? Well, if you do believe in God, where do you get your morals from? From the Bible. That is the only physical hands-on thing that you can say, well, this is what God wants. I mean, you can have your own visions and experiences and feelings, but that's not going to work for anyone else. That's nothing you can point to. Well, I feel God wants us to do this. You can persuade them, but other than that, you've got the Bible, and you've got to cherry pick it. You've got to explain away, well, back then this, and people, oh well, he didn't support slavery in the Bible. Well, it sure did. But it's not a problem. That's what every culture did at the time. It was all a very similar thing. Slavery was a thing back then. We have, by following the idea of human flourishing, reduced suffering, you know, helping each other out. Now we don't. Slavery is largely reduced. There are some areas, you know, in some areas it still exists, but back in the Civil War, there were the anti-slave pointed to the Bible, and the pro-slavery people pointed to the Bible.
Yeah.
Kind of a wash, right? So
yeah. Well, you know, I'm going to agree with you, Bob, that there are some difficulties in the Bible. And I think you gave a good answer, actually. That would be my response, which was, you know, with regard to slavery, you know, God didn't overturn it. It was a widespread practice, but I don't think that means it was God's ideal. In fact, I think God has always been working with human beings, you know, in ways that are not his ideal, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of things that humans have done throughout history that are not God's ideal, and stuff we're doing today that's not God's ideal. But I think we see who God is in Jesus Christ. He is the representative of who God is. And Jesus loved his enemies, and he told us to love our enemies. So I do think, you know, the morality that's in the Bible is incredible. And, you know, the love that comes from God, like, that is the best thing in the world. And I think that's what you experienced, you know, with the breakfast making and those feelings. I think that was the love of God. And I don't see a source for that without God?
It was it was an amazing experience, but there was nothing that required God. I loved people. I helped people. I got the right, brain chemistry as a result of that. It made me feel great. It's he's got to do something. This is it's all kind of random, and there's good stuff and bad stuff and really bad stuff and people that stand out and people that screw up, and I just without saying, oh, I insist that there is this, I don't know, and it's fine, whatever you think you need to believe, but it's just not enough for me to go back and I'm sorry, I'm just getting really tired.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm
I
so sorry.
understand.
We could do a question. It's hard to, I lock up. I can't come up with words. But if we could do questions or something, that would help. Or I don't
Yeah.
have to.
If anybody has any questions for Bob, please put them in and I'll ask him.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's okay if you're tired today, and we can always talk more about this later. I understand it's not,
I don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to think of some other thoughts that I have. This no, I won't talk about that.
It's okay. I mean, it's up to you, whatever you want to talk about. I mean, are there other difficulties with the Bible that you wanted to talk about? Things that,
Well,
just.
I think I've talked, I talk about Atrahasis, the flood myths, how it's you can just tell that they took a story from the Mesopotamian culture, and they changed it. They changed the gods. They said, well, it's all going to be our God. We'll change the shape of the boat, change the guy's name. Oh, here it's the gods. The god wanted to destroy people because they were too noisy and the gods couldn't get to sleep. Well, that's silly. Our God wouldn't do something like that. He'll have to destroy them because every thought of their heart was continually evil. It's ridiculous. How could every thought of their heart be continually evil, including the babies? Come on. This is a silly story. They took a story and they wanted to make a statement about what they thought their God was. How he would be completely justified in destroying every person on earth because they were evil and he was holy and good. Mm-hmm. That's fine, but can't you come up with your own story, or can you record an event that actually happened? And then later, when we had geology and radiometric dating and all these things, we would find the evidence, say, oh my gosh, this actually happened. Well, then maybe we can believe this stuff that you claim about your God, that they took somebody else's story and switched it around and said, look, yeah, our God, you better represent, you better fall in line because he's he's a, I don't say badass, but you know.
Well, there is another way to look at that. And, you know, the what I understand when I see that there's other flood stories from around the world, that tells me that this was an event that was remembered even, you know, like throughout culture.
There's
Like
no,
people remembered this event, and they may have recorded details differently, but it was something that got recorded in quite a lot of cultures because it, you know, was just such a huge event that happened in history.
there is no physical evidence of a worldwide flood. I don't care what these apologists say, and they are using bogus geology to evidence. Do not it no. Why is it so difficult? Why can't it be when why can't we just find things that don't leave any question? Say, oh my gosh, look, this is exactly what we would find. If there was a flood, there would be all the different life forms, all the animals would be all mixed up. There'd be dead people way down and other, it would be just a big mix. Oh no, it's in nice layers, and the simpler animals are down here, and then they get more complex and they go up and up. It's ridiculous. If you come back, if you're motivated to believe it, then you have to go in and make all these excuses for what you find and tell yourself that no, this shows us the flood. It does not. And I'm sick of hearing this stuff, this bogus science. It's that's enough. Now that I'm on.
Now you're on a roll. Now you're, and we do have some questions. We're going to get to those,
okay,
but now I want to let Bob go on his roll.
Young Earth creationism, and this bogus flood geology is an anti-science position, and these guys like Ken Ham that support this. Then the next thing you know, what they're talking. Oh, well, global warming isn't a thing. Well, yeah. If you don't believe in science, you can say anything you want and say, well, the science about the flood, the mainstream science about the flood is wrong. So global warming, everything. We don't have to listen to science. And then you get anti-vaxxers. Come on, people. We know things that science that we learn through scientific method is the best picture of reality that we have at the point. It'll change. Usually it gets more accurate. We'll learn even more. But nothing's going to flip around to where, oh, we were completely wrong about everything. Now we know this. I mean, it builds, the knowledge builds and builds and builds and builds. And it's focus. It's like focusing a microscope. You can see these little things running, and you focus in, then you can actually see the details. And that's how science works. And just to throw it out because your book says that it happened this way. Oh, well, we don't need science. Well, we don't need to worry about vaccines. We don't need to wear masks. We need to worry about global warming. It's a bad road. It will not end well, and it'll
do you think
be suffering.
Do you think it's possible? Because I mean, speaking for myself, I'm a young Earth creationist, but I believe in vaccines, and I believe we need to take care of the environment, good. And so I mean,
well, you threaded the needle right. You got right down there. Other people went off over here. Other people. Why is it so hard? There's all this information, all this stuff, and you take it, and depending on what you emphasize and what you disregard, you're going to end up here. So you like where you're at. Other people like where they're at, and they're way over here. It doesn't seem well thought out. It doesn't seem why are there so many divisions, and it just doesn't look good. It doesn't work.
Bob Luca asks, what was the breaking point for you? Like, at what point did you say, I don't believe this?
I got my first smartphone, and I started watching. I'd watched Pelagia occasionally when I had a chance. We didn't have internet. I had my computer, and when I got someplace where I could watch videos, I would watch Pelagia. I really liked him, and so I got my smartphone so I could watch any videos I want anytime. And over a couple days, the stuff was building up, and I was watching an Aaron Ra video, and I wish I could find it. I wish I knew the exact one, because I didn't think to mark it. But he was speaking someplace, and he was talking about the firmament. And he said, the firmament, it's this dome that's over the earth. And I said, there's no dome over the earth. I'd actually never heard that the firmament described as a solid dome over the earth. Well, that's the sky. That's the atmosphere is the firmament. I said, there's no dome over the earth. This is crap. I don't believe this. And it had been building up, but that would just kind of, and this is really weird, but I almost heard a click in my head. it felt like I heard click. It's like, so that was it. But it had been building up, because the people that I had been fellowshipping with for the past couple years, and they were lovely people. They were nice, but I couldn't see where they had any wisdom or insight into basic human flourishing. They seemed to be violating the rule of lessen suffering and increase flourishing for people. They were off on the wrong path as far as I was concerned. So that was it.
Was it their politics? Because I know a lot of people, I mean, I've even been shocked by the way that Christians have supported certain people in politics.
Yeah, because you heard 84% of evangelicals. Well, I moved from this college town, and I was going to this college thing, so we could talk about stuff, and we didn't really talk about politics that much. So it was this enclave of there was a mixture of ideas. It was a university, so it gave rise to this interchange and discussion. But then I moved out here to this rural country, and it was solid red, and there wasn't even any question. The best, some of them just didn't care much about it one way or the other. They kind of didn't face it directly, but the other ones were, boy, no, they knew exactly how they felt and what they wanted to happen. So that's it.
Yeah.
What else?
Jamie says, what's it going to take, Bob? Come home. The Bible put proper dimensions used in cargo ships today.
No, that's you see, it's like, okay, I believe this. Wait a minute, somebody says it's not true. So you go to your apologists, and they got their stuff, and you read that. And I used to do the same thing. I went and heard Josh McDowell back in the 70s. He had it all laid out. Oh, well, there you go. If I had any doubts. So I didn't really look into it, but no, come on. There's a really neat video that I've watched it like 3 times. I just love it so much. But Irving Finkel talks at the Oriental Institute in Chicago, which is when they say Oriental, it's the ancient Near East. It's the Orient used to mean the Near East, not China. And he speaks there, and he talks about, he had this tablet from Atrahasis, and it had the dimensions of the boat that was supposed to be built, and the shape of it, and what it was made of, and it was round. It was a round boat made of rope. It's called a coracle. You coil it around like you're making a basket, and you sew the rope together and you build it up. But it was huge, and they had these wooden ribs inside, and this is all laid out. And so what they ended up happening, they tried to build it, but they had to go down to 1/3 scale. But it all worked out, and the only thing is the pitch. They couldn't get the good pitch from Iraq. They had to use this bad pitch. So it floated, but it leaked a lot, stuff like that. But they made a movie of it. So he's I haven't seen that yet, but he speaks to the Oriental Institute, and he's so funny. He's just a great guy. But that was the Bible ark story is based on this earlier story, which never happened.
So you have some fans here. I just want to put up their comments. I don't know if you've been reading them, but Germania is a big fan. He says our Bob is an awesome Bob. And
just think of if I got enough sleep.
And then wow, Bob is life. Bob is king. From Kim.
Yeah.
So I was hoping your fans would show up.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it later. I've got my wife's iPad over here, so I can see the. If I stopped and looked, I can see the chat, but it hasn't really. There's a delay. It's weird.
Well, was there anything else on your mind to talk about? Because we don't have any further questions in here.
Okay. Oh my gosh, 2.5 hours. Lord.
No, 1.5.
1.5. Okay.
Yeah.
It was 1 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I had a joke for you. I hope you don't take offense.
No, I'm fine. Go for it.
Okay, here's my Rebecca joke, and this might be a little mean, but Rebecca, you know why I think you like to talk to atheists?
Why?
Because when you're in high school, you never got to sit at the cool kids table.
Really?
No, it's a joke. Come on.
So the atheists are the cool kids now?
Yeah, I think so. Well, they're a mixed bag. I'll give you that. Some of them are, they're just people. They're just people, but there's no expectation, it's, some of them are just complete jerks. And you go, oh man. And some of them are very right-wing. Not very many, though. Not very many. They're mostly pretty liberal and humanistic, and it's, they're actually, atheist kind of doesn't mean anything. Question is, are you skeptical? In other words, what do you require for evidence before you believe something? Are you a humanist? Is your main thing human flourishing, reduction of human suffering, caring for other people? And so skeptical and agnostic. I think for a lot of things, it's okay just to say, I don't know. I don't know for sure. I think I've got a handle on this. I think this is what if we finally know, it'll turn out to be this. But for now, I can't say 100% for sure I don't know. And that's okay. Because if we knew everything, we could we'd stop learning. So you know, atheist is just kind of an extra thing. You should be an agnostic, skeptical humanist. That's what I try to be.
Well, would you call me a skeptical person?
No, I don't. No, I don't think you're skeptical. I think you're kind of set. You know. Let me go back to what was that one that your one video that made me so mad when you were trying to how to hang on to your faith and this motivated reasoning and say, well, forget about,
how to find God, like my tips on finding God.
Yeah.
Is that what bothered you?
Yeah. And I wrote this big long, oh my gosh, it was like if I didn't know anything about Islam and I followed these steps, I could be, I don't know much about Islam. And if I was in the right frame of mind and I thought the way you wanted to think, I would end up Islam. But here's the picture that I got that I never got to use. So I'll use it now. So it's like, well, I don't really like bowling. Well, you should give bowling a try. Yeah, it's a lot of trouble. Well, have them put the bumpers up, and then you'll love bowling. It's not bowling. There's no risk. You're not accomplishing anything if. Anyway, that was my picture for the motivated reasoning. In other words, thinking, getting yourself into this thing that'll go right where you want it to go, rather than risk ending up over here or over there.
Well, that video I was trying to help people who desire to know God and want to find him, but have a hard time. So, I mean, for me, I think I'm a very skeptical person, but I'm much more skeptical of what humans tell me. I have a relationship with God. And so
Rebecca, wasn't the Bible written by humans?
Absolutely.
Okay, so isn't that humans telling you things?
Well, humans wrote it down. Now, I believe it's inspired by God, but, the Bible is not my only source of information about God. So there's, many things that God has communicated to me directly. And so I'm not just relying on what the Bible says.
Yeah. 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 And, you can't argue with personal experience, except for that it's personal. That's for you. So if I don't get that, but there would be a lot if I did, there'd be a lot of explaining to do, well, how come this happened? Why does the Bible say this? What was I gonna? I'm just, I think you're about, I think a little younger. You're a little older than my son. You're my kid's age. My son and my daughter. So
I got some time to get where you're at. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know, and I don't know what you're going to go through, and I hope it's nothing awful, and it's not the end of the world if we all end up the same place, which is nowhere, unfortunately. So it's not, and you're not a harmful, dangerous person like Bill Gothard or Jerry Falwell or any of these other guys. I found a channel since we last talked, just before we when we were going to do this earlier, I found this channel. It's called Fundy Fridays. And this girl's name is Jen, and she covers all these different fundamentalist groups and families, and the Duggars and the Plaths and she does Jerry Falwell. She does all this, and she does it with a sense of humor, and she doesn't put them down, and she tells people not to harass them and not to do this, but it's kind of interesting. Her name is Jen, and then her boyfriend helps her out. But it's called Fundy Fridays. It's a really fun channel, and that's part of the thing. I went back and got information on Bill Gothard. She did a video about him, and then the like the Duggars and some of a lot of their beliefs and their practices come from his teaching. Mm-hmm. Even though he's completely out of it now. There's this scene where he tried to get back into they were having some big thing, and he wanted to go back in and participate, and they were in the parking lot saying, no, you can't go in there. Kicked him out, and he wasn't accepting it. So it was really kind of sad, really. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on and sharing your journey. It was really kind of a fun history. You've been around a while. You've been through a lot of different periods in like American Christianity. So that was a lot of fun.
I'm going to say something. When I'll just tell you real quick.
Yeah.
When Hal Lindsey, when Blake Planet Earth came out, it was before the Left Behind series was written. So what they did, this is a book. Can you read it?
Yep, In the Twinkling of an Eye.
Yeah, they pulled it out. It says something about it was published in the 1920s in the USA, but I think it was written in England in the late 1800s. Because reading and I read it. So there was this, Jesus is coming back. So they said, oh, let's piggyback on this. So they pulled this up and did a paperback, and it was a 2-part series. The other one was called The Mark of the Beast, and I read both of them. But we were cleaning out the storage. We were emptying out our storage, and all my mom's old books, and I found this. I said, oh my gosh, I read this back when I was in high school. So I read it again. It's pretty crazy.
Really?
But that was their Left Behind, their attempt at doing Left Behind, and later on, the LaHaye and the other guy wrote Left Behind. So, it just keeps coming around. Yep. Jesus is coming back. Maybe 3,000.
I think so, but I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Bob, and thanks for everybody who's been with us. It's been a fun talk, and so I appreciate you. Hey there, Nicholas. So glad you guys could make it, and hope everyone has a great day. Hope you get some good rest, Bob.
Yeah, I'll sleep better tonight. I have a bad night, and then I have a good one. But I didn't want to cancel. I just said, well, we'll just see what happens.
Cool. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.